It was a quiet evening when Sarah Thompson heard the front door creak open. She turned, expecting to see her husband, but instead, standing in the dimly lit hallway, was her 10-year-old daughter, Emily. She had been missing for almost a year. Sarah's heart stopped. Tears welled in her eyes, but before she could move, she saw something that sent a chill down her spine. Nestled in Emily's arms were 3 newborn triplets, their tiny bodies wrapped in thin, hospital-like blankets. The girl's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Mom, please don't let them take us," she whispered. Sarah felt her knees go weak. Questions flooded her mind. Where had Emily been? Who were these babies? And why did she look so terrified? Panic surged through her veins as she reached for her phone. She had no choice. She had to call 911. But what she didn't know was that this call would change everything. Before we dive into this gripping story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if you love thrilling, emotional tales that make you think, subscribe to Mr. Edward's Tales, because here, every story leaves a mark. Helena jolted at the sound of the insistent knocking on the door. Her heart raced instinctively, as she wasn't expecting any visitors at that hour. She hurried to the entrance, hesitated for a moment, and cautiously turned the doorknob. When the door opened, her entire body froze. Standing before her, wrapped in an expression of sheer despair, was Olivia, her daughter, who had been missing for a year. The shock made her chest tighten painfully. The young girl's face was pale, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears, her lips trembling. But what sent a chilling shiver down Helena's spine were the 3 newborn babies in Olivia's arms, small, fragile, wrapped in thin blankets. Before she could even utter a single word, Olivia whispered in an urgent tone, "Mom, please don't call anyone. Don't tell anyone I'm here." Helena's mind spun in a whirlwind of questions and conflicting emotions. She wanted to pull her daughter inside, to wrap her in her arms and shield her from whatever horrors she had faced. But there was something deeply unsettling about Olivia. She didn't just look frightened, she was absolutely terrified. The way her eyes darted nervously from side to side, as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the shadows, sent a wave of unease down Helena's spine. "Get inside now, before someone sees you," she murmured, pulling Olivia and the babies into the house. As soon as the door shut, Helena grabbed her daughter's face, forcing her to look into her eyes. "Where have you been? What happened to you? And these babies? My God, Olivia, what is going on?" Olivia took a deep breath, clutching the infants tighter against her chest. Her gaze dropped to the floor, as if gathering her thoughts was a struggle. "I can't talk about everything now. Not yet. But I swear, Mom, I never wanted to leave. They took me. They locked me up in a horrible place. I don't even know where it was. All I know is that I escaped. But they're going to come after me. They're going to want the babies back. We need to hide." Helena's heart clenched at her daughter's desperation, but something inside her was also on high alert. "Who are they, Olivia? Who is after you?" Before Olivia could answer, Helena noticed something even more disturbing. Her gaze fell upon her daughter's arms, and her stomach churned at the sight of thin, reddish marks along her pale skin. Small injection points, repeated countless times, as if someone had been experimenting on her. "What is this, sweetheart? What did they do to you?" Olivia recoiled, pulling down the sleeves of the oversized coat she wore to hide her arms. "Mom, please don't ask me that now. I promise I'll tell you everything when we're safe. But first, we need to make sure no one knows I'm here." Helena's maternal instincts screamed at her to push for answers, to not let this go. But the urgency in Olivia's eyes was undeniable. Something terrible had happened to her, something so sinister that whoever was behind it was still looking for her. The house, once a place of refuge, now felt vulnerable, too exposed. Helena shut all the curtains and checked the locks on the doors and windows. Her mind raced for an immediate solution, but it was overwhelmed with fear. "We need help, Olivia. We can't just hide without knowing what we're up against." Olivia gripped her arm tightly. "No, Mom. No one can know. You don't understand. These people, they are dangerous. They have eyes everywhere. If anyone finds out I'm here, we're done for." The sheer desperation in her daughter's voice made Helena swallow hard. Who could be so powerful as to have kept Olivia imprisoned for a year and still be a threat now? The weight of the situation made the air feel suffocating. Helena was trying to piece her thoughts together when, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something through the window, a black SUV, parked across the street. Her heart pounded even harder. She didn't remember that car being there before. The unsettling feeling of being watched made every muscle in her body tense. "Sweetheart, you said they'd come looking for you. How do they know where we are?" Olivia's face turned even paler. "They have resources, Mom. Cameras, tracking devices, maybe even bugs. I tried to get rid of anything that could trace me, but I never know how far they can go." Helena stepped away from the window quickly, lowering her voice. "Then we're being watched, which means we have to leave. Now." Fear was creeping through Helena's veins like a slow-acting poison, but she knew she couldn't afford to panic. Her eyes darted from the babies to Olivia, then to the locked door. If that SUV was really there because of them, it wouldn't be long before something worse happened. "Grab your things, sweetheart. If you have anything important, take it with you. We can't stay here." Olivia, though visibly shaken, nodded quickly and started moving. Helena felt the crushing weight of the decision settling in her chest. This was her home, the only place she had ever considered safe. But now, everything had changed. Nothing was safe anymore. The only thing she knew for certain was that she had to protect her daughter and those babies at all costs. Olivia sat on the edge of the worn-out couch, her arms wrapped tightly around her body as if trying to hold herself together. Helena watched her closely, searching for any sign that would help her understand what had happened to her daughter. The weight of the situation pressed on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Olivia had been gone for an entire year, 365 days of silence, fear, and unanswered questions, and now she had returned with 3 newborns in her arms, terrified, refusing to explain. "Olivia, please," Helena's voice cracked, her desperation seeping through every syllable. "You have to tell me something. Anything. Where have you been? Who took you?" Olivia hesitated, her gaze fixed on the floor as if the answers were hidden within the cracks of the wooden boards beneath her feet. "I don't remember everything," Olivia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's like my mind has gaps. I remember waking up in a place with bright lights. The walls were white, too white. Everything smelled sterile, artificial, like a hospital, but it wasn't one." She closed her eyes, exhaling sharply as if trying to push away the memories. "They kept us locked up, me and others. There were other girls, Mom, some younger, some older. I don't even know how long I was there before I realized that something was wrong." A cold dread spread through Helena's veins. This wasn't just a case of abduction. Something far worse had happened to her daughter. Helena took Olivia's, hands in hers, feeling how cold they were despite the warm temperature in the room. "What did they do to you?" she asked carefully, already fearing the answer. Olivia hesitated before slowly rolling up the sleeves of her oversized coat. Helena sucked in a sharp breath at the sight of her daughter's arms. Faint but numerous small puncture marks lined her skin, evidence of repeated injections. "They tested on us," Olivia continued, her voice flat, void of emotion. "They took our blood, injected things into us, ran endless exams. I never knew what they were doing. We weren't allowed to ask questions. The ones who did, they disappeared." Her fingers trembled as she pulled her sleeves back down, as if covering the marks would also hide the trauma. "I didn't escape alone. There were 2 others with me, but we got separated. I don't know if they made it." Helena's stomach churned with unease, and for the first time since Olivia had returned, she felt something beyond relief. She felt anger. Who had done this to her daughter? What kind of people treated human beings like lab rats? And the babies, what role did they play in all of this? As if reading her thoughts, Olivia looked down at the newborns, her expression darkening. "They belong to them, Mom. These babies, they're not normal. I don't know how to explain it, but they did something to them before they were born. That's why they want them back so badly." Helena felt her throat tighten, a sickening realization settling in her chest. The babies weren't just innocent infants caught in a terrible situation. They were the reason for it. Before Helena could process the weight of that revelation, a movement outside caught her eye. Her entire body tensed as she carefully stepped toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see. Her heart nearly stopped when she spotted the same black SUV still parked across the street. It wasn't there when she had first opened the door to Olivia. It had arrived after. Someone knew Olivia was here. Panic surged through her veins, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We need to leave," she whispered, turning back to Olivia, who now looked even paler than before. Now, a loud knock on the door made both women freeze. Helena's breath caught in her throat. Whoever was outside had found them much faster than she had anticipated. Olivia grabbed the babies and clutched them tightly against her chest, her entire body trembling. Helena's mind raced. She had no weapons, no way to defend herself or her daughter, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to let them take Olivia again. Steeling herself, she moved toward the door, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Mom, no," Olivia whispered urgently, but it was too late. Helena was already gripping the doorknob, ready to face whatever horror awaited them on the other side. The moment Helena turned the doorknob, Olivia's grip on her arm tightened like a vice. "No, don't open it," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with urgency. Helena hesitated for a split second, torn between her instincts and her daughter's fear. Another knock followed, heavier, this time almost impatient. The babies in Olivia's arms stirred, one of them letting out a soft whimper. The sound sent a chill through Helena's spine. Whoever was outside wasn't just a concerned neighbor. This was something else, something far more sinister. A sudden crash shattered the tense silence, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Helena spun around just in time to see the living room window explode inward, shards scattering across the wooden floor. A masked man in black tactical gear lunged through the opening, landing with precision. Before Helena could react, the front door burst open with brute force, nearly knocking her off her feet. Two more figures stormed inside. Olivia let out a terrified gasp and instinctively shielded the babies with her body. "Run!" she screamed, her voice breaking with sheer panic. Helena didn't think. She acted. She grabbed a heavy lamp from, the side table and swung it with all her strength at the nearest intruder. The impact sent him staggering back, but it wasn't enough to take him down. Another man rushed toward Olivia, arms outstretched, reaching for the infants. Olivia, driven by desperation, kicked out at him, knocking him off. Balance. The third man, the one who had come through the window, pulled a gun from his belt. "Don't fight," he ordered in a chillingly calm voice. "Just hand them over, and no one gets hurt." Helena's heart pounded violently against her ribs, but she refused to give in to fear. "Over my dead body," she spat, stepping protectively in front of Olivia and the babies. The man sighed as if annoyed by her resistance, then lifted the gun higher. "That can be arranged." Before he could pull the trigger, an ear-splitting gunshot rang out, but it wasn't from him. The masked man jerked backward, his weapon slipping from his fingers as a dark red stain spread across his chest. He collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. Olivia let out a startled cry, and Helena turned to see a new figure standing in the doorway, gun raised. Gabriel Novak. The other two intruders barely had time to react before Gabriel fired again, hitting one in the leg. The injured man howled in pain, dropping his knife as he clutched the wound. The last intruder made a quick decision. He turned and fled through the broken window, disappearing into the night. Gabriel didn't chase him. Instead, he stepped inside, scanning the room, with sharp, calculating eyes. "We have to go. Now," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Helena was still frozen in shock, staring at the lifeless body on the floor. "Who the hell are these people?" she whispered. But Gabriel was already moving, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the door. "No time for that now. More will come." He turned to Olivia. "Can you run?" Olivia nodded, though she looked like she was barely holding herself together. I think so." Gabriel glanced at the babies. "We'll have to move fast. They're not going to stop until they get what they came for." Helena knew he was right. Without another word, she followed him outside, Olivia close behind. The black SUV across the street was empty now, its doors left open. Whoever had been inside had joined the attack, or they were calling for backup. Gabriel led them to a dark-colored car parked a few houses down. He opened the back door. "Get in." Helena hesitated only for a second before helping Olivia into the car. She climbed in after her, still clutching one of the babies. Gabriel shut the door and got into the driver's seat, speeding off before anyone else could appear. As the house disappeared into the distance, Helena felt the full weight of what had just happened crash over her. Her home had been invaded. Men had tried to steal her daughter and the babies. People were willing to kill for them. She turned to Gabriel, her voice trembling with rage and desperation. "Who the hell are you?" Gabriel's eyes remained on the road, his grip on the steering wheel tight. "Someone who knows exactly what you're dealing with." Helena clenched her fists. "And what the hell is that?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "The people who took Olivia. The people who made those babies. They don't lose their property without a fight. And you just became their biggest problem." Helena sat stiffly in the back seat of the car, her pulse still erratic from the attack. The weight of a newborn rested in her arms, and Olivia sat beside her, clutching the other two babies, as if her life depended on it. Gabriel drove in silence, his face set in stone, eyes fixed on the road. The fair city lights blurred past them as they sped toward an unknown destination. Helena's thoughts raced just as fast. She turned to Gabriel, her voice sharp. "You said you know who they are. Start talking." Gabriel didn't answer right away. He took a sharp turn onto a deserted road before finally speaking. "The men who came for you tonight weren't just some random thugs. They belonged to an organization called Instituto Genese." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I take it you've never heard of them." Helena shook her head, her grip on the baby tightening. Olivia, however, tensed, visibly. "I have," she whispered. "I didn't know their name before, but now I do." She swallowed hard. "That's where I was. That's where they kept me." Helena felt her stomach drop. She turned to her daughter. "You mean—" Olivia nodded. "That place, with the white walls, the experiments, the injections. That was Instituto Genese." Helena's breath caught in her throat. She turned back to Gabriel. "What do they do?" Gabriel exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "They operate under the guise of a private research institution, one dedicated to scientific advancement. In reality, they're conducting genetic experiments, playing with human DNA in ways that shouldn't be possible." His grip on the steering wheel tightened. "And they've been doing it for decades." Helena felt sick. "And you? How do you know all of this?" Gabriel hesitated before answering. "Because I've been tracking them for years." Silence filled the car, heavy and suffocating. Olivia's breathing was unsteady, and Helena could see the way her daughter's fingers trembled as she held the babies. The weight of the truth was crushing. The babies weren't just innocent infants. They were products of something far more sinister. A thought struck Helena like a blade to the chest. "Olivia," she turned to her daughter. "These babies, do you know where they came from?" Olivia's face paled even more. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared down at the tiny faces, her arms tightening protectively around them. "I don't know everything," she admitted, "but I know they were made, engineered, designed to be different." She lifted her gaze, eyes filled with an emotion Helena couldn't quite name. "And I know that I was part of it." Helena's hands clenched into fists. "Part of it? How?" Olivia hesitated. "I think they used me. My DNA." The car swerved slightly as Gabriel's grip momentarily faltered. He shot Olivia a sharp look in the mirror. "Are you sure?" Olivia shook her head. "I don't know. I just remember hearing them talk about me, about my genetic compatibility. I remember being hooked up to machines, tests, endless tests, and then suddenly there were babies." She looked down at them again. "And they were mine. I don't know how, but I know they were made from me." Helena felt her entire body go cold. She turned to Gabriel. "Is that even possible?" Gabriel's jaw tightened. "With the kind of resources Genese has, more than possible." Helena couldn't breathe. This was worse than she had imagined. Her daughter hadn't just been kidnapped. She had been used as some kind of genetic experiment, her body turned into a factory for something unnatural. And now, the people behind it wanted their creations back. Gabriel spoke again, his voice low. "We need to get somewhere safe. You can't go home. They know where you live." Helena closed her eyes for a brief moment, the loss of her home hitting her all at once. But she forced herself to focus. "Where are we going?" Gabriel hesitated. "I have a place, a safe house." Olivia let out a shaky breath. "And then what? We just keep running forever?" Gabriel's expression darkened. "No, we find a way to stop them." Helena turned back to Olivia, who was staring down at the babies with a mix of love and fear. "We'll figure this out," she promised. "We won't let them take you again." Olivia nodded, but Helena could see it in her daughter's eyes. She wasn't sure if that was a promise her mother could keep. The tension inside the car was suffocating. Gabriel drove through the empty highway with precision, his eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the road ahead. Olivia sat in the back seat, holding the babies tightly against her chest, her body stiff with anxiety. Helena couldn't stop glancing over her shoulder, half expecting another black SUV to appear at any moment. The attack at the house had been swift and brutal. They had barely escaped. Gabriel broke the silence first. "We'll be at the safe house soon, but that won't stop them for long. They're relentless. We need a plan." Helena's voice was tight. "A plan? We don't even know what we're up against." Gabriel let out a short breath, his fingers gripping the steering wheel. "I know enough. I know that Jennings doesn't let go of its assets without a fight. And those babies, they're worth more than anything they've ever created." He glanced at Olivia through the mirror. "They're going to send everything they have after you." Olivia flinched. She had known this deep down, but hearing it said out loud made it real. "Then what do we do?" Gabriel didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive, tossing it onto Helena's lap. "This was in the pocket of one of the men I killed back at your house." Helena picked it up cautiously. "What's on it?" Gabriel's expression was unreadable. "That's what we need to find out." Before anyone could respond, Olivia suddenly tensed. "Mum, they're here." Helena's breath caught as she turned her head. Far behind them, headlights appeared on the highway, growing closer. It was them, the same black SUVs. Gabriel muttered a curse. "Hold on." He slammed his foot on the gas, the car roaring forward. The babies stirred, one of them beginning to cry softly, but Olivia held them tighter, whispering soothing words. Helena clutched the door handle, bracing herself. "They're gaining on us," she warned. "I see them." Gabriel gritted through his teeth. He took a sharp turn onto a winding road, tires screeching against the pavement. The SUVs followed without hesitation. Helena's pulse pounded. "Gabriel, we can't outrun them forever." "I don't plan to," he replied darkly. Before Helena could ask what that meant, Gabriel yanked the wheel, swerving the car off the main road and onto a dirt path leading into dense woods. The sudden movement jolted everyone, Olivia gasping as the car bounced violently over the uneven terrain. The SUVs followed, their engines roaring as they pursued. Gabriel's voice was calm, controlled. "There's an abandoned cabin up ahead. We can make our stand there." Helena's eyes widened. "Make our stand? You want to fight them?" "We don't have a choice." The dirt path narrowed, trees looming over them like dark sentinels. Up ahead, barely visible in the moonlight, was the outline of a small wooden cabin. Gabriel didn't slow down until the last second, skidding the car to a stop just in front of the entrance. "Go!" he barked. Helena didn't hesitate. She grabbed Olivia's arm, practically dragging her out of the car as Gabriel reached for his gun. The SUV screeched to a halt behind them. "Inside, now!" Gabriel shouted. Helena pushed Olivia forward, helping her inside the cabin just as the first gunshots rang out. Bullets shattered the windshield of the car they had just escaped from. Gabriel returned fire, his shots precise, taking down one of the masked men before he could reach the cabin. Olivia curled up in a corner, shielding the babies as best as she could. Helena crouched beside her, heart hammering. "Stay down." Gabriel moved fast, barricading the door before pulling a second gun from his belt and tossing it to Helena. "Can you shoot?" Helena's hands trembled as she caught the weapon. A second barrage of gunfire cut her off. The attackers were closing in. Gabriel's voice was grim. "We might not make it out of this." Helena's gaze flickered to Olivia and the babies. No, she refused to accept that. Another shot rang out, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching the cabin. Gabriel positioned himself by the window, aiming. Helena tightened her grip on the gun, forcing herself to focus. The door rattled. Then, with a loud crash, it was kicked open. The fight had begun. The gunfire had stopped, but the air inside the cabin remained thick with tension. Helena's hands trembled as she gripped the gun Gabriel had given her, her pulse hammering in her ears. The attackers had been pushed back, but she knew it was only temporary. They would regroup. They would return. Gabriel paced near the broken window, peering into the darkness outside. "We don't have much time. They'll send reinforcements." He turned to Helena and Olivia, his expression grim. We need answers. Now. Helena swallowed hard, her gaze shifting to Olivia. Her daughter sat on the floor, knees drawn, up, clutching the 3 babies tightly against her chest. They had stopped crying, as if sensing the urgency in the room. Olivia's face was pale, her body trembling, not just from fear, but from exhaustion. I told you what I know, Olivia murmured. I don't remember everything. Gabriel knelt in front of her. Try harder. Those men aren't just after you. They want these babies. Why? Olivia's breath hitched. Her eyes flickered to Helena before settling on Gabriel. Because they're not normal. Helena felt her stomach tighten. What do you mean? Olivia hesitated, then slowly unwrapped the blanket around one of the babies. Helena's breath caught. The infant looked healthy, but as Olivia carefully lifted the tiny arm, she revealed something that made Helena's blood run cold. Beneath the delicate skin, faint lines glowed softly, barely visible in the dim light. What the hell? Gabriel muttered, leaning in closer. I don't know what they did to them, Olivia admitted, her voice shaking. But I heard them talking about DNA manipulation, about enhancing human abilities. They weren't just growing babies, they were making something else. Helena stared in disbelief. You mean their experiments? Olivia nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. Yes, and they used me. Gabriel's expression darkened. Used you how? Olivia exhaled shakily. They took my DNA. They altered it, modified it somehow, and then they created these babies. She swallowed. They're mine, but they're not just mine. A stunned silence filled the cabin. Helena felt her throat tighten. Who else? Olivia's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, but I remember hearing them mention something. Project Eden. Gabriel's face hardened. I've heard that name before. Helena turned to him sharply. What do you know? Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, his jaw clenched. Project Eden isn't just an experiment. It's a movement, a genetic revolution. The people behind it believe they're creating the next evolution of humanity. Children engineered to be stronger, smarter, immune to disease. But these aren't just enhancements. They're complete rewrites of human biology. Helena's stomach churned. And these babies? They're the first successful ones, Gabriel said grimly. The prototypes. Proof that their research works. Olivia's grip tightened around the infants. That's why they'll never... Stop hunting us! Helena's heart pounded. Her daughter had been used, violated in ways she couldn't even fathom. And now, the children they had forced her to create were the most valuable assets of a monstrous organization. Gabriel stood abruptly. We need to move. Now. Helena frowned. Where? I know someone. A journalist. He's been digging into Genesee for years. Gabriel grabbed the flash drive he had taken from the attacker at their house. If there's anything on here that can expose them, he'll find it. Olivia's voice wavered. And if there isn't, Gabriel's eyes met hers, then we'll find another way to bring them down. Helena took a deep breath. She had no choice but to trust Gabriel. If they wanted to survive, they needed to uncover the truth before it was too late. Gabriel drove in silence, his expression rigid as he maneuvered the car down a dark, winding road. Helena sat in the back seat with Olivia and the babies, her body tense, exhaustion pulling at her muscles. The weight of what they had just learned pressed down on her like an unbearable force. Project Eden, a genetic experiment designed to create superior humans. And Olivia, her daughter, had been an unwilling participant. The babies weren't just children. They were proof of something terrifying, proof that science had gone too far. We're almost there, Gabriel said suddenly, breaking the silence. Helena glanced out the window. The dense trees lining the road gave way to an isolated house, barely visible in the darkness. It looked abandoned, its wooden exterior worn down by time. Who is this journalist? She asked. Daniel Rhodes, Gabriel answered. He's been investigating Genesee for years, trying to expose their operations. He's the only one who might be able to make sense of what's on that flash drive. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. Can we trust him? Gabriel exhaled. I trust him enough to bring you here. He pulled the car to a stop in front of the house. The moment they stepped out, the cold air wrapped around them, making Olivia shiver. Gabriel led them up the creaky porch steps and knocked on the door. 3 short raps, then 2 more. A few seconds passed before the locks clicked and the door swung open. A man in his 40s stood in the doorway, his face lined with exhaustion, dark circles beneath his eyes. He scanned them all quickly before stepping aside. "Come in, quickly." Helena hesitated, but Gabriel motioned for her to follow. They stepped inside, the warmth of the small cabin immediately easing the bite of the cold. Daniel closed the door behind them and bolted it shut. His gaze landed on Olivia. "So," he said, his voice low, "this is the girl who escaped." Olivia stiffened, pressing the babies closer to her chest. "Who are you?" Daniel exhaled sharply. "Someone who's been trying to bring down Genesee long before you even knew they existed." He turned to Gabriel. "Do you have it?" Gabriel pulled the flash drive from his pocket and tossed it onto the wooden table. "We need answers." Daniel picked it up and walked over to an old laptop sitting on the desk. He plugged it in and waited as the screen flickered to life. Helena could hear Olivia's uneven breathing beside her, see the tension in her daughter's posture. They were all waiting, for confirmation, for proof, for something that would tell them what to do next. Then, Daniel's expression darkened. "This is worse than I thought," he murmured. Helena stepped closer. "What's on it?" Daniel's fingers flew over the keyboard. Financial records, experiment logs, Project Eden's entire operation. This is everything." He paused, his jaw tightening. "And your daughter. She wasn't just a test subject. She was the foundation." Olivia flinched. "What does that mean?" Daniel hesitated. "It means they weren't just experimenting on you. They were building something around you." He pointed to a series of documents on the screen. "Your DNA wasn't just compatible. It was vital. Without you, this project would have failed." Helena's stomach turned. "Are you saying Olivia was special to them?" Daniel nodded grimly. "She wasn't just any girl. She was the blueprint." The room fell into stunned silence. Olivia looked down at the babies, her fingers tightening around their tiny bodies. "So, they'll never stop hunting us," she whispered. Daniel's voice was grim. "Not unless we stop them first." Gabriel's expression hardened. "Then we need to hit them where it hurts." Daniel exhaled. "I might have a way." He turned the laptop toward them, pointing at an address. "This is where their main lab is located. If you want to end this, that's where we start." Helena looked at Olivia. Her daughter's face was pale but determined. She was done running. They all were. The dim glow of Daniel's laptop screen illuminated the tense expressions on their faces. The silence in the room was thick, heavy with the weight of revelation. Olivia sat on the edge of the couch, her arms wrapped protectively around the babies, her breathing uneven. Helena stood behind her, hands clenched at her sides, while Gabriel remained by the door, his eyes scanning the windows, as if expecting an attack at any moment. Daniel tapped a few keys, pulling up more files. Project Eden isn't just a scientific experiment. It's a movement, one funded by people in high places. He turned to Helena. "You need to understand something. Genesee isn't just one facility, one operation. It's a network, deeply connected to politicians, corporations, and military entities, the kind of people who have enough power to erase someone's existence if they want to." Helena felt a chill crawl down her spine. "And they've been doing this for how long?" Daniel exhaled. "Years, maybe decades. Every time someone gets close to exposing them, they disappear. Journalists, whistleblowers, even a few scientists who grew a conscience. No one who knows too much survives long enough to tell the truth." Olivia swallowed hard. "So if we go after them, we're dead?" Daniel shook his head. "Not necessarily, but we have to be smart. The people funding this project aren't invincible. They rely on secrecy. If we can expose them to the public before they silence us, we might have a chance." Gabriel crossed his arms. "And you think this flash drive is enough to do that?" Daniel hesitated. "It's a start. It proves the existence of Project Eden. It exposes some of the key players funding it. But it's not enough to take them down completely." He turned the screen toward them. "There's a name here, a major financier, someone powerful enough to fund an entire network of research facilities." He tapped the name, and Helena felt her breath catch. A prominent politician, someone the entire country knew and trusted. Helena's voice was barely a whisper. "This can't be real." Daniel's expression was grim. "It is. And if we go public with this, the backlash will be enormous. The moment we leak this, they'll come after us with everything they have." Olivia tightened her grip on the babies. So what do we do? Gabriel stepped forward. We get more proof. Daniel nodded. I have a contact. Someone who used to work inside Genesee. They went into hiding years ago. But if anyone knows the full scale of this project, it's them. Helena's stomach churned. Where do we find them? Daniel hesitated. That's the problem. They don't want to be found. Gabriel cracked his knuckles. Then we make them listen. The tension in the room deepened. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. The weight of everything they had learned pressed down on them like an unbearable force. The night stretched on as they remained gathered in Daniel's cabin, trying to formulate a plan, trying to make sense of the madness they were now entangled in. Olivia sat with the babies in her arms, her face drawn with exhaustion, but her eyes remained sharp, alert. Helena stood beside her, the need to protect her daughter and those infants burning inside her like an unquenchable fire. Gabriel leaned against the wooden table, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. If Daniel's contact is still out, we need to find them before Genesee does. Daniel sighed. That's easier said than done. I don't even know if they're still alive. Helena's mind raced. They couldn't afford uncertainty. They needed a secure place to lay low, even if just for a short time. Then, as if the idea had been sitting in the back of her mind all along, it surfaced. There's a place, Helena said, her voice steady. A place no one would think to look. Gabriel and Daniel turned to her, waiting. Olivia lifted her gaze. Where? Helena hesitated for only a moment before answering. The orphanage where I grew up. It was shut down years ago. Abandoned. No one goes there anymore. Daniel frowned. And you're sure it's safe? Helena nodded. It's not on any records. The only people who ever knew about it are either dead or scattered. If we need to disappear for a while, it's our best option. Gabriel exhaled. Then that's where we go. Within minutes, they were moving again. Gabriel drove through the darkened roads, the headlights carving a path through the emptiness. Olivia sat in the back seat, holding on to the babies, while Helena stared out the window, lost in memories she had buried long ago. The view, orphanage, the place where she had spent her childhood. It had been a shelter once, a home for the forgotten. Now, it would be their sanctuary. As they neared the outskirts of the city, the roads became narrower, overgrown with weeds and neglect. The building finally came into view, an old, crumbling structure, its windows boarded up, its walls worn by time. Helena's breath caught in her throat. It looked smaller than she remembered, more fragile, but it would have to do. Gabriel killed the engine. We move quickly. Helena stepped out first, leading the way. The door creaked as she pushed it. Open, dust swirling in the faint moonlight. The air inside smelled of abandonment, of forgotten lives. Olivia followed, her grip on the babies tightening. Are you sure no one knows about this place? Helena turned to her daughter, forcing confidence into her voice. I'm sure. Gabriel entered last, scanning every corner, every shadow. We can't stay too long, just long enough to get a new plan. As they settled inside, Olivia sat on an old mattress with the infants, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Helena knelt beside her, brushing her hair from her face. Rest. I'll keep watch. Olivia's lips trembled. Mom, do you think they're still watching us? Helena hesitated. Then she turned to the broken window, to the darkness outside, and whispered, I don't know. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if they had truly escaped, or if they had only delayed the inevitable. The orphanage was silent, wrapped in a suffocating stillness that made every sound seem louder than it should have been. Dust covered the wooden floors, and the faint scent of decay lingered in the air. Helena sat near one of the broken windows, watching the shadows stretch across the abandoned yard. Outside, her grip tightened around the gun Gabriel had given her. She hadn't fired a weapon in years, but now, holding it felt like the only form of control she had left. Behind her, Olivia sat on an old mattress, her arms wrapped around the babies, gently rocking them as they stirred. Her face was hollow with exhaustion, dark circles beneath her eyes. How long are we staying here? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. As long as it takes. Daniel had left earlier that morning, heading back to the city to gather more information to confirm if the contact they needed was still alive. But without him, they had no way of knowing how close Genesee's people were to finding them. Helena turned to Olivia, her heart aching at the sight of her daughter looking so worn, so fragile. "We'll figure this out," she said, though the words felt hollow. "Daniel will find something, and we'll put an end to this." Olivia didn't respond immediately. She stared down at the babies, tracing her fingers over their tiny hands. "Mom, what if we can't?" Her voice trembled. "What if we never stop running?" Helena didn't have an answer. The weight of everything pressed down on them like an invisible force. The silence stretched, the only sound being the occasional rustling of leaves outside. Then, suddenly, Olivia shivered. She rubbed her arms, frowning. "I feel strange." Helena immediately turned to her. "What do you mean?" Olivia's expression was distant, unfocused. "I don't know, just off, like something is wrong inside me." She swallowed hard. "It started a few days ago. First I thought it was just exhaustion, but it's getting worse." Gabriel pushed away from the wall, stepping closer. "What kind of symptoms?" Olivia hesitated, as if she didn't want to say it out loud. "I feel cold, even when I'm not. My hands go numb sometimes, and my head, it's like there's a pressure there, but not a headache. Something else." Helena's chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" Olivia lowered her gaze. "Because I don't know what's happening, and because I'm scared." Gabriel exchanged a look with Helena. "It could be after effects of whatever they did to her at Jenna's." Helena's heart pounded. "Then we need to get her checked by a real doctor." Gabriel shook his head. "We can't risk a hospital. Not yet." Sinking realization settled over Helena. Whatever was happening to Olivia, it wasn't natural. It was something Genesee had done to her, and now it was getting worse. Before anyone could say another word, the sound of tires crunching against gravel outside made them all freeze. Helena shot to her feet, gun in hand. Gabriel moved swiftly to the window, peering through the cracks. "SUV, unmarked. Someone's here." Fear surged through Helena's veins. Had they been found? Gabriel motioned for Olivia to stay down, then moved toward the back of the room, pulling a knife from his belt. "We need to be ready." Olivia tightened her grip on the babies, her breathing shallow. Helena positioned herself near the door, heart hammering. The sound of approaching footsteps filled the air. And then, a knock. 3 sharp, deliberate knocks. A message, a warning, or something much worse. The 3 knocks echoed through the abandoned orphanage like a warning shot, sending a chill through Helena's spine. She tightened her grip on the gun, her breath shallow. Gabriel had his knife ready, his body tense, muscles coiled like a predator preparing to strike. Olivia remained pressed against the wall, shielding the babies, her breathing uneven. The silence stretched, unbearable, until a voice spoke from outside. "I know you're in there." The tone was calm, deliberate, male. "I'm not here to hurt you, but if you don't let me in, they will." Gabriel exchanged a sharp look with Helena. It could be a trap. Genesee had already proven how relentless they were. But the alternative, doing nothing, could be even more dangerous. Helena stepped forward, her voice low. "Who are you?" The man outside didn't hesitate. "Lucas Vance. I used to work for them. A former Genesee operative." The name didn't mean anything to her, but the way Gabriel stiffened told her it meant something to him. Gabriel's voice was cold. "You were part of their experiments?" A pause. Then, "I was part of shutting them down. Or at least, I tried to be." Helena's mind raced. This could be the contact Daniel was trying to find. Or it could be someone sent to manipulate them. Gabriel motioned for everyone to stay back. He moved cautiously, gun drawn, before unlocking the door just enough to see the man outside. Lucas Vance stood there, hands raised, showing he wasn't armed. His face was gaunt, marked by deep lines, his eyes shadowed by years of something that looked dangerously close to regret. "They're coming," Lucas said. "I can help you, but you need to move. Now." Helena hesitated. "Why should we trust you?" Lucas exhaled. "Because I know what's happening to your daughter." Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. Helena turned to Olivia, whose face was pale, her lips slightly parted in shock. Gabriel's jaw tightened, but he stepped back, opening the door just enough for Lucas to slip inside. The former operative wasted no time. "They've activated the hunt for you," he said quickly. "They won't stop now. They've lost their greatest asset, Olivia and the babies. The only way to cover their tracks is to eliminate every loose end." Helena swallowed hard. What do you mean? About Olivia? Lucas's gaze flickered to Olivia. They never expected you to escape, he said carefully. They designed you to be dependent on them. Whatever experiments they did to you, they weren't just about the babies. They changed you. Olivia's hands trembled. Changed me how? Lucas hesitated. Your body, your DNA. They altered it to make you the perfect host. A sickening realization settled over. Helena. Host? For what? Lucas's jaw clenched. For whatever they planned to create next. A cold wave of nausea hit Helena. This wasn't just about the babies. Olivia herself was part of the experiment. Gabriel snapped back to action. We can't stay here. If they're coming, we need to be gone before they get here. Lucas nodded. There's a way, but we need to act now. Helena turned to Olivia, her heart breaking at the fear in her daughter's eyes. They had no choice. They had to run. Again. And this time, there would be no more hiding. Lucas moved quickly, his every step filled with urgency. He led them through the orphanage's back entrance, guiding them toward a narrow path that cut through the overgrown trees. Helena held onto Olivia's arm tightly, keeping her daughter close, while Gabriel walked ahead, gun drawn, scanning their surroundings. The babies were bundled tightly in Olivia's grasp, their tiny faces pressed against her chest. They'll track us soon, Lucas said in a low voice. We have a small window to disappear before reinforcements arrive. Helena's heart pounded. Where are we going? Lucas glanced at her, but kept moving. To Genesee. She stopped in her tracks, yanking Olivia back with her. What? Lucas turned, his face serious. The only way to stop this is to go straight to the source. Helena's pulse roared in her ears. Are you insane? You just told us they're hunting us, and now you want to walk into their facility. Lucas's jaw tightened. You don't understand. There are others. Silence. Olivia clutched the babies tighter. What others? Gabriel demanded. Lucas hesitated. More children. More like them. He motioned toward the infants. Project Eden wasn't just about these three. There are more, held in a secondary lab, deeper inside their network. If we don't stop them now, they'll keep creating more. A cold dread settled over Helena. She turned to Olivia, whose face had gone pale. I can't leave them, Olivia whispered. Helena's breath caught. Gabriel exhaled, his fingers tightening around the gun. This is suicide. Lucas's expression hardened. Maybe, but it's the only way to expose them. The facility we're going to, there are records, files, data. If we can get them, we can finally take them down for good. Helena looked at Olivia. Her daughter was trembling, but there was something fierce in her eyes. She wasn't running anymore. She wanted to fight. Helena closed her eyes briefly. Then, with a slow nod, she made her decision. We go, she said. Gabriel muttered a curse but nodded. Lucas exhaled in relief. Then we move now. They followed him through the dense trees, heading toward the enemy, toward danger, toward the heart of everything they had been running from. And this time, they weren't running to escape. They were running to end it. The night air was thick with tension as they approached the facility. Lucas led the way, his movements quick and deliberate. Gabriel followed closely, his gun drawn, scanning the area for threats. Helena held onto Olivia's arm, keeping her daughter close, while Olivia clutched the babies tightly against her chest. The facility was hidden deep within an industrial complex, surrounded by fences and security cameras. From a distance, it looked abandoned, just another forgotten structure. But Helena knew better. Behind those walls, Jenny's was still operating, still experimenting, still creating more victims like Olivia. Lucas crouched behind an old truck, motioning for them to stay low. Security is tight, but I know a way in. There's a maintenance entrance at the back. We'll have to move fast. Helena's stomach churned. And if we get caught? Lucas met her gaze. We don't. Gabriel exhaled sharply. Let's move. They weaved through the shadows, staying out of sight. The sound of distant voices carried through the air, guards patrolling the perimeter. When they reached the back of the facility, Lucas pulled out a small device, hacking into the security panel. A few seconds later, the door clicked open. They slipped inside. The corridor was dark, sterile, lined with metallic walls that seemed to hum with energy. The air smelled of chemicals and something else. something unnatural. "This way," Lucas whispered, leading them deeper into the facility. Helena's grip on Olivia's arm tightened. Her daughter's breathing was shallow, her body tense. "Are you okay?" Helena whispered. Olivia nodded, but her fingers trembled. I feel something." Before Helena could ask what, Lucas stopped abruptly. He turned to them, his face grim. "They know we're here." An alarm blared through the facility. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows along the corridor. "Run!" Gabriel ordered. They sprinted down the hall as doors slammed shut behind them. Footsteps thundered in the distance. Guards were coming. Lucas pulled out his gun. "We need to split up. Helena, take Olivia and the babies. Get to the server room. Find the records. Expose them." Helena's breath caught. "And you?" Lucas's expression was unreadable. "We'll hold them off." Gabriel didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lucas by the shoulder. "Don't die." Lucas smirked. "No promises." Then he turned, disappearing into the shadows. Helena grabbed Olivia's hand. "Come on." They ran. As they weaved through the corridors, Helena's mind raced. This was it. The moment they stopped running. The moment they fought back. And she wasn't going to lose her daughter again. Helena's lungs burned as she ran, gripping Olivia's hand tightly while the babies remained pressed against her daughter's chest. The flashing red lights cast long, shifting shadows on the metallic walls, and the blaring alarm echoed through the corridors, drowning out the pounding of their footsteps. They could hear the guards closing in, boots slamming against the floors, voices barking orders. Gabriel ran ahead, leading them through the maze-like facility. He didn't hesitate, moving with the precision of a man who had faced death before. Lucas had stayed behind to buy them time, but Helena knew it wouldn't last long. They had to reach the server room, get the files, and get out before they were trapped. "This way!" Gabriel called, rounding a corner. Helena followed, practically dragging Olivia with her. Her daughter was slowing down, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The babies were safe for now, but Olivia, Helena could see the strain in her body. Whatever Jenners had done to her, it was catching up. "Mom!" Olivia gasped, her steps faltering. Helena tightened her grip. "Not now, baby. Just a little farther." Suddenly gunfire erupted. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, sparks flying. Gabriel cursed, pulling his gun and returning fire. "Get down!" he shouted. Helena yanked Olivia behind a steel cabinet, shielding her with her body. The guards were closing in. Gabriel fired again, taking down one of the masked men. But there were more. Too many. "We're running out of time," he muttered. Helena's mind raced. They needed an escape now. Then she saw it, a service hatch near the floor, half hidden behind a crate. "There!" she pointed. Gabriel shot at another guard before sprinting to the hatch. He pried it open. "Go! Now!" Helena helped Olivia crawl. Through first, carefully passing the babies through. Then she followed, squeezing into the dark, narrow tunnel. Gabriel was last, slamming the hatch shut just as another round of gunfire rang out. The tunnel was small, barely enough space to crawl. Helena's hands pressed against the cold metal as she moved forward, following the dim emergency lights. "Where does this lead?" she whispered. Gabriel's voice was tense. "Outside, but we're not safe yet." Minutes felt like hours as they crawled through the shaft. Then, finally, light. Gabriel pushed open a grate, revealing the open desert beyond. The facility. They emerged into the cold night air, gasping, but there was no time to rest. A helicopter hovered in the distance, its searchlight sweeping across the barren landscape. "They're still coming," Olivia whispered, fear thick in her voice. Gabriel pulled out a small device, pressing a "I" button. Not for long. An explosion shook the ground beneath them. The facility behind them erupted into flames. Helena turned, eyes wide. "Lucas!" Gabriel's jaw tightened. He knew the risks. Tears burned Helena's eyes, but she forced herself to move. They had to keep going. The facility was gone, but Jenners wasn't finished. They had more enemies to face, and the fight was far from over. The explosion's shockwave still echoed through the desert as Helena forced herself to keep moving. The facility behind them was engulfed in flames, smoke billowing into the sky like a signal of war. Olivia clutched the babies tightly, her legs trembling beneath her, but she didn't stop. Gabriel led the way, his weapon still in hand, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Helena's breath was ragged. They had destroyed one of Genese's key laboratories, but they weren't safe. Not yet. The organization still existed, its reach spreading far beyond that single facility. And they knew that Genese would never stop until they got Olivia and the babies back. A low hum filled the air. The helicopter. Helena's heart slammed against her ribs as she looked up. The searchlight cut through the night, sweeping across the barren land. Gabriel grabbed her arm and yanked her forward. "We have to move. Now." They ran, their feet kicking up sand and dust as they pushed toward the only cover in sight, a series of rocky outcroppings in the distance. The babies stirred, sensing the urgency in their mother's movements. Olivia's breathing grew more labored, her strength fading. I can't keep running," Olivia gasped. Helena's heart clenched. She couldn't lose her daughter. Not again. Gabriel cursed under his breath. "We're not going to outrun them." He reached into his vest, pulling out a small radio. "Daniel, we need that extraction, now." Static crackled in. Response before Daniel's voice came through. "I'm on my way. Hold tight." Helena didn't know what Daniel had planned, but they didn't have time to question it. The helicopter was getting closer. Gabriel turned to Olivia. "Get behind the rocks. Stay low." Olivia nodded weakly, cradling the infants as she crouched behind the jagged stones. Helena crouched beside her, wrapping an arm protectively around her daughter. Gabriel knelt nearby, his gun raised, waiting. The helicopter circled overhead. Then, gunfire. Bullets rained down, striking the rocks around them, sending shards flying. Olivia flinched, shielding the babies with her body. Gabriel fired back. One shot, two. Then he ducked down, reloading. "They're trying to pin us down until ground forces arrive." Helena's pulse pounded. "We can't let them take her." Gabriel's expression hardened. "They won't." Then, in the distance, a roar. Engines. A black SUV sped across the desert, kicking up dust. Daniel. The helicopter shifted, adjusting its focus. Gabriel took the chance. He stood, aimed, and fired a single shot. The bullet hit its mark. The helicopter veered sharply, spinning out of control. It wasn't destroyed, but it bought them seconds. Precious seconds. The SUV skidded to a stop. Daniel flung open the door. "Get in!" Helena pulled Olivia to her feet, practically dragging her toward the vehicle. Gabriel covered them, firing at the remaining forces. Then, at the last second, he jumped in after them, slamming the door shut. Daniel hit the gas. The SUV roared forward, speeding away from the burning facility. The helicopter was still struggling in the distance, and behind them, figures scrambled in the wreckage, too far to stop them now. As the lights of the facility disappeared into the horizon, Helena exhaled sharply, her whole body trembling. Olivia was safe. The babies were safe. But the war wasn't over. Daniel glanced at them in the mirror. That was close. Gabriel reloaded his gun. "It's not over." Helena met his gaze. "So what now?" Daniel's expression darkened. "Now, we finish this." The road stretched before them, leading into an uncertain future. They had survived the night, but morning would bring a new battle. And this time, they wouldn't just be running. They would be fighting. And that's the end of this intense journey. But is it really over? Will Genese return? Will Olivia and her family ever truly be safe? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Mr. Edward's Tales, and share it with someone who loves gripping, suspenseful stories just like this one. Your support keeps these stories alive. Stay tuned for more thrilling tales.